Elias Kane had always been drawn to forgotten places. Where others saw barren deserts, broken ruins, and endless silence, he saw mysteries waiting to be uncovered. His life as a human adventurer and freelance explorer was not easy. Most of the time, he barely earned enough credits to keep his small starship flying. But Elias lived for the thrill of discovery. On this particular journey, he found himself on Taraxis, a world written off by most galactic maps as useless. It was a dry planet, covered in endless dunes of sand and scattered rocky plateaus. There were no cities, no trade posts, and almost no reason for anyone to come here. But Elias had been chasing rumors of ancient alien trade routes, whispers that caravans once crossed these deserts thousands of years ago. If the stories were true, perhaps some relics still waited beneath the shifting sands. The twin suns burned overhead as Elias guided his crawler across the desert floor. His vehicle was a simple machine, a four-wheeled hauler outfitted with scanning gear, survival supplies, and a drone dock. The tires crunched over layers of stone and sand while the wind carried dust across the horizon. Elias wore a thin protective suit, his face hidden beneath a sand visor, the kind designed for heat and grit rather than combat. For 3 days, his scans had picked up nothing more than old mineral deposits and collapsed caves. Elias was beginning to suspect that this expedition would be another failure, when his drone, hovering 50 meters ahead, pinged an anomaly. "Come on," Elias muttered to himself, steering the crawler forward. He stopped at a ridge, letting the drone feed its camera image to his wrist display. There, half buried in the sand, stood something impossible, a black stone monolith, at least 15 meters tall, its surface polished smooth as glass. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its face, lines and spirals that no translation software recognized. Elias's eyes widened. That's not on any record. Curiosity burning in his chest, he parked the crawler and trudged across the sand. Standing before the towering stone, he reached out and brushed the surface. It was cool to the touch despite the suns blazing above. He circled the monolith, scanning it with his wrist device. The readings were strange. The material was not stone, nor metal, nor any alloy known in human databases. It carried a faint energy signature, like a battery still alive after uncounted centuries. Elias grinned beneath his visor. Now this is something worth finding. As he studied the monolith, his drone pinged again. Another anomaly. Then another. Elias turned to see faint shapes on the horizon, more black spires sticking out from the dunes like jagged teeth. One by one, he traveled to each. The monoliths formed a line across the desert, as though marking a path. Each carried the same glowing symbols, each pulsed with the same quiet energy. The trail stretched for kilometers, leading Elias deeper into the wastelands of Taraxis. His supplies were limited, but he couldn't ignore this. Something important lay at the end of this path. He could feel it. For 2 days, he followed the markers, resting only when exhaustion forced him to stop. The monoliths grew closer together, the energy readings stronger. The desert floor gave way to cracked canyons and jagged cliffs, forcing Elias to leave the crawler behind and continue on foot with only his pack and drone. At last, standing at the edge of a massive canyon, he saw it. Carved into the canyon wall was a structure unlike anything he had ever encountered. A fortress. It was colossal, so wide it stretched across the cliff face, so tall it seemed to pierce the sky. Towers jutted upward, weathered by time yet still solid. The walls were engraved with alien patterns that glimmered faintly even in the daylight, and at its heart stood a gate of monumental size. 2 enormous doors fused shut, dust and stone piled before them. Elias's heart pounded. He had seen ruins before, but never something of this scale. This fortress was not just a building. It was a relic of a forgotten empire. His drone whirred beside him, scanning the structure. Energy readings spiked off the chart. The fortress was not dead. Something inside was still alive. Elias set up camp on the canyon edge. He needed time to plan. The walls were smooth, the gate sealed. Breaking in by force was impossible. But Elias was patient. He spent hours circling the fortress, mapping entrances, studying cracks in the stone. The air smelled faintly of ozone near the gates, as if power still flowed within. At night, under the pale glow of Taraxis's moons, Elias sat by a small fire, staring at the fortress. He felt both awe and unease. Who built this place? Why had it been abandoned? And why, after all this time, did it still feel as if it was waiting for something or someone? The next day, Elias tried again. He pressed his hand against the giant doors, half expecting nothing. To his surprise, the symbols engraved on the surface flickered to life under his touch. Lines of light spread outward like veins, glowing brighter and brighter. The ground trembled. Dust fell from the canyon walls. Elias stumbled back as a deep, grinding sound echoed across the canyon. The doors, untouched for thousands of years, began to move. Slowly, with the groan of ancient machinery, they pulled apart. Inside, darkness yawned. A massive corridor stretched beyond, filled with shadows and faint glimmers of light. Elias could smell the stale air rushing out, heavy with age. His drone buzzed nervously, scanning the opening. Energy readings surged higher, like a heartbeat quickening. Elias stood frozen, his pulse racing. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his curiosity, stronger than fear, pushed him forward. "This is it," he whispered. "This is what I came for." He stepped toward the gates. The walls pulsed faintly as if acknowledging his presence. As he crossed the threshold, the drone followed, its lights casting beams across the alien stone. The fortress swallowed him whole, and the canyon fell silent once more. Elias Kane, human adventurer, had opened the doors of something the galaxy had long forgotten, and deep within the fortress something stirred awake. The doors of the fortress had closed behind him with a thunderous sound, leaving only his drone's lights to guide the way. The corridor stretched forward like the throat of some massive beast, wide enough for starships to pass through. The walls were carved from the same strange black stone as the monoliths outside, but inside they were decorated with patterns of glowing lines, like veins of light trapped within rock. Elias moved slowly, his boots echoing against the smooth floor. His visor scanned the walls, recording every detail, but the symbols were still unreadable. They shifted and shimmered as though alive, rearranging themselves when he wasn't looking directly at them. "Not friendly," he muttered under his breath, though the silence swallowed his words. The air inside was stale, carrying a metallic tang. Dust floated in the beam of his light, disturbed for the first time in centuries. The fortress felt heavy with age, yet alive with something more. Elias couldn't shake the sense that he was being watched, even though the scanners showed nothing but stone and silence. After several minutes, the corridor opened into a vast hall. Elias stopped in awe. Pillars taller than any skyscraper stretched up into the shadows, their surfaces engraved with alien figures. Massive statues lined the walls, shaped like towering armored beings with elongated helmets and angular weapons. Each one seemed to glare down at him, silent guardians frozen in time. The floor was inlaid with patterns of light, forming a great spiral that drew the eye toward the center of the hall. There, on a raised platform, stood a circular structure, perhaps an altar, perhaps a control hub, its surface still glowing faintly with power. Elias's drone scanned it, returning high-energy readings. Whatever this fortress was, it wasn't completely dead. Some systems were still functioning, maybe even aware. He approached carefully, touching the platform's edge. Instantly, the glowing lines brightened, running up the pillars and across the statues. The entire hall seemed to awaken. Elias took a step back, heart racing. What did I just do? The ground trembled. From the walls, hidden panels slid open, revealing strange machines. They resembled sentinels, floating constructs of black metal with glowing blue cores. Their limbs unfolded like knives, and their heads swiveled toward him with mechanical precision. Great. Just great. Elias cursed softly. The sentinels hovered forward, blocking the exits. They didn't attack immediately, but circled him, scanning him with beams of light. His visor beeped with warnings as the energy around him surged. Easy now, Elias said aloud, raising his hands. I'm not here to break anything. The machines didn't understand. One sentinel extended a limb, releasing a crackle of electricity that made the hairs on his arms stand. Elias realized this fortress wasn't just a ruin, it was a test. Whoever built it had left guardians behind, designed to challenge any intruder. His mind raced. He couldn't fight them head-on. His pulse pistol wouldn't scratch their armor. But maybe he didn't need to fight. He needed to think. Elias whistled to his drone. Distract them. The small machine zipped upward, flashing lights and sending out bursts of noise. The sentinels immediately turned their attention toward it. While they recalibrated, Elias sprinted across the hall toward the spiral platform. As he reached it, the glowing surface shifted beneath his feet, symbols rearranging into a pattern. His visor beeped, translating fragments. Prove, worth, passage. Elias groaned. Figures. A puzzle. The platform lit with shapes, triangles, circles, and spirals, rotating in complex sequences. The statues around the hall shifted slightly, their stone heads turning to watch. It wasn't just a puzzle. It was a judgment. The sentinels closed in, their weapons charging. Elias focused on the glowing shapes, his heart pounding. The symbols reminded him of the monoliths outside, the path markers that had led him here. Follow the trail, he whispered. He remembered the order of the monoliths: spiral, triangle, circle. His hands flew across the glowing surface, pressing the shapes in sequence. The platform pulsed with light. A deep sound rumbled through the hall as the statue's eyes lit up like twin suns. The sentinels froze mid-movement, their cores dimming. Then one by one they retreated back into the walls, panels sliding shut behind them. Elias collapsed onto the platform, gasping for breath. He had passed the first test. When he looked up, a new doorway had appeared at the far end of the hall. The glowing spiral on the floor had stretched forward, forming a path toward it. Guess that's my invitation, Elias said, forcing himself to his feet. He walked along the spiral path, passing beneath the gaze of the massive statues. Each one seemed less threatening now, almost approving. Perhaps they had been watching not to kill him, but to see if he was clever enough to survive. The doorway led into another corridor, narrower and darker than the first. The walls here were lined with murals, glowing faintly in shifting colors. Elias paused to study them. The murals told a story. He saw images of towering beings, the same figures as the statues, wielding weapons of immense power. They conquered worlds, built cities that touched the stars, and ruled vast empires. But then the murals darkened. The beings fought among themselves, their cities burning, their armies tearing each other apart. Finally, the last images showed the fortress itself, sealed shut, standing alone while the empire around it crumbled to dust. Elias's chest tightened. He didn't need a translation to understand. The builders of this fortress had destroyed themselves. This place was their last stronghold, a memory locked away. Vathar, he whispered, naming them after a word repeated across the murals. It had the weight of a species name. So this is what became of you. The corridor led him to another chamber, smaller but equally breathtaking. In its center rested a stasis pod, massive and ancient, covered in glowing symbols. Energy readings spiked off the chart. This pod was still active. Elias circled it cautiously. Through the transparent cover, he saw a figure inside. Not a living alien, but something different. A machine. A sentinel larger than the others, humanoid in shape, its armor gleaming even through layers of dust. His drone beeped nervously. Elias studied the pod, realizing that this must be the heart of the fortress, the central guardian, the final protector. He pressed a hand against the glass. The symbols flared brightly, responding to his touch. The pod hummed louder. Elias stepped back quickly. No. I didn't mean to. The entire room shook. The pod's locks clicked open, steam hissing out. The figure inside shifted, light sparking across its chest and eyes. Elias's stomach dropped. He had woken it. The machine's eyes flared to life, two burning blue flames in the darkness. Slowly it rose, towering over him. Its voice rumbled like thunder, echoing through the chamber. Identity, unknown, species, human, status, intruder. Elias froze, his pulse hammering. He had survived traps and puzzles, but this was different. He was face to face with something that had been sleeping for thousands of years, a guardian designed by a dead empire. The figure stepped from the pod, its massive form shaking the floor. It stared down at him, scanning him with beams of light. Then, unexpectedly, its tone shifted. DNA pattern, resilient survival capacity, high, possibility, worthy. Elias swallowed hard, unable to move. The guardian leaned closer, its eyes blazing. Human, you stand where no others have stood. This fortress will judge you. The chamber doors sealed shut. The walls pulsed with light. Elias realized he had entered another test, but this time there would be no simple puzzle. He braced himself as the guardian raised its arm, summoning smaller constructs from the walls. The trial had begun. Elias Kane's heart raced as the towering guardian stood before him. Its body was massive, black and metallic with glowing blue lines that pulsed like veins. It was humanoid in form but far larger than any human, its movements precise and unnervingly smooth. From the walls, smaller constructs hovered in the air, circling him like predatory birds. He had faced danger before, but nothing like this. His pulse quickened and his hands trembled slightly over the strap of his utility belt. He had to think fast. Every instinct told him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The chamber was sealed, the walls alive with glowing energy, and the guardian's eyes locked onto him, analyzing, calculating. Human threat level unknown, initiate trial of worthiness, the guardian rumbled. Elias swallowed. A trial? He wasn't expecting this. He had thought the fortress was abandoned, but now he realized it was alive in ways he couldn't yet understand. The Vathar had not left a simple ruin, they had left a test. He glanced around the chamber. The smaller constructs were armed with sharp appendages and glowing energy cores. They moved in formation, circling him, waiting for him to act. He took a deep breath and looked at the central guardian. "You want me to survive? Then I'll survive," he muttered to himself. The guardian extended one massive arm. From its palm, a pulse of energy shot toward the floor. Platforms of glowing light emerged, forming a path across the room. It wasn't just a challenge of strength, it was a challenge of intelligence, timing, and observation. Elias moved carefully, stepping from platform to platform. The constructs followed, attacking with precision whenever he paused too long. He leapt, ducked, and twisted, narrowly avoiding blasts of energy. The platform shifted beneath his feet, forcing him to react quickly. He remembered the monoliths outside and the puzzle in the first hall. He realized the fortress wasn't just testing strength, it was testing his adaptability, his ability to think and survive in a hostile environment. Elias ducked under a swinging energy blade, rolled to the side and sprinted across a collapsing platform. His drone buzzed nearby, distracting one of the smaller constructs. He pressed himself against the wall as it attacked, then leapt to another platform, the glow of the guardian illuminating his path. Minutes felt like hours. Every movement required precision. Every choice carried weight. And yet, despite the danger, he felt a strange exhilaration. This was why he had become an adventurer. The challenge, the unknown, the thrill of discovery. Finally, he reached the center of the chamber, beneath the massive guardian. His chest heaved, sweat dripping from his visor. He looked up at the towering figure, expecting an attack. Instead, it spoke in a calm, measured tone. Human. Observation complete. Analysis. Creativity and resilience high. DNA and mental capacity. Adequate. Verdict. Provisional acceptance. Elias blinked. Provisional? What does that mean? He muttered aloud. The guardian's eyes glowed brighter. Then in a voice softer but no less commanding, it spoke. You are human. You possess qualities long thought extinct among your species. Adaptability, resourcefulness, courage. These qualities are unexpected. Elias exhaled slowly, realizing he had passed the first part of the trial, but the guardian wasn't finished. This fortress holds the legacy of the Vathar. With it comes power, with it comes responsibility. Only one deemed worthy may wield it. Elias's mind raced. The Vathar had been one of the most feared civilizations in galactic history. If this fortress held their legacy, the knowledge and technology inside could change the galaxy. And now somehow it was offering that to a human. But why me? He asked quietly. Why a human? The guardian's voice resonated through the chamber, almost like a sigh. The Vathar feared humans. They saw your species as weak, fragile, limited. Yet your species survives against impossible odds. Where others fall, you adapt. This is worthy of respect. This is worthy of trust. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. He was not just facing a machine or a puzzle anymore. He was being evaluated as a representative of his entire species. To access the core legacy, you must complete the final trial, the guardian continued. Before Elias could respond, the floor beneath him shifted. Panels slid open, revealing a deep pit filled with intricate machinery, cables, and glowing conduits. The air hummed with power. Rising from the pit, several constructs larger than the previous ones emerged, armed with energy blades and shields. The Guardian stepped aside. "These will test your limits. You may not survive. Only through survival will the path open." Elias clenched his fists. There was no turning back. If he failed, he would die, or worse, be trapped forever in this ancient fortress. He sprinted forward, dodging the first construct's sweeping energy blade. His pulse pistol flared, but it barely scratched the enemy's armor. He realized brute force wouldn't work. He needed strategy. He lured one construct toward the edge of the pit, then ducked as it stumbled on a shifting panel. The construct fell into the machinery below, sparks flying. 2 down, 4 to go. Elias continued, using his environment, leaping over cables, sliding under beams, and using the smaller constructs as distractions. Each movement required calculation and improvisation. He felt his heart pounding, muscles straining, mind working faster than ever. Finally, only one construct remained, larger and more imposing than the others. Elias hesitated for a moment, then remembered the Guardian's words: adaptability, resourcefulness, courage. He ran forward, dodged a spinning energy shield, and used the construct's own momentum against it, pushing it toward an unstable platform. The construct fell with a crash, disabling its systems. Elias collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. The room was silent. The Guardian stepped forward, towering over him. "Human, you have survived. You have shown resourcefulness and strength. You have passed the trial. Access to the core legacy is granted." Elias slowly got to his feet, looking toward a massive door that had just opened at the far end of the chamber. Light spilled from within, illuminating the corridors and walls. Beyond it lay the heart of the fortress, the place that held the Vaethar's greatest secrets. The Guardian spoke one last time. "Know this. The Vaethar failed because they lacked humility and wisdom. You must not repeat their mistakes. What lies beyond is not to be taken lightly. Use it wisely. Human, your species' future may depend on it." Elias nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. He had not just survived. He had proven that humanity was capable of more than even the Vaethar had predicted. He stepped toward the glowing door, his drone hovering beside him. The air vibrated with energy, machines hummed, and the fortress seemed to pulse with life, almost in anticipation of what he would do next. The corridor beyond was vast, filled with chambers and vaults containing alien machinery, storage units, and data cores. Elias moved slowly, taking in every detail. The walls glimmered with light, showing star maps, diagrams of advanced engines, and records of planets he had never heard of. He realized that this fortress was not just a building. It was a library, a workshop, and a weapons vault all in one. The Vaethar had created a place to preserve everything they valued, and it had been waiting for someone capable of understanding it. As he explored, he found artifacts that defied explanation. Weapons of incredible power, energy cores that could fuel entire cities, and machines capable of creating materials from raw energy. The technology was beyond anything humanity had yet achieved, yet somehow it felt like it was meant to be used wisely, not recklessly. Elias paused before a massive console, glowing with blue light. He ran his fingers over the controls and a holographic display activated. Star maps, fleet designs, and research logs filled the air. Names of planets, some destroyed, some thriving, floated in three-dimensional space. He felt a thrill of discovery. Here was knowledge that could reshape the galaxy. Yet it came with a warning. Power without wisdom could destroy everything. The Guardian's voice echoed softly in his mind, as if guiding him. Learn, understand, preserve. The future of your species depends on your choices. Elias nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. He had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that had been hidden for thousands of years, waiting for a human to awaken it. And now he understood. Humanity was not just surviving in the galaxy. Humanity could inherit the legacy of the Vaethar, not as conquerors but as stewards, wise enough to learn from the past. For the first time, Elias felt truly alive. The fortress had tested him, awakened him, and now entrusted him with a mission far greater than himself. He took a deep breath, ready to continue into the heart of the fortress, ready to uncover the full secrets of a civilization lost to time. Elias Kane, human adventurer, had proven himself worthy. and the Vathar's legacy was about to awaken. Elias Kane stepped into the central chamber of the fortress with cautious reverence. The room was vast, nearly half a kilometer across, its ceiling lost in shadow. The air hummed with quiet energy, vibrating through his chest and bones. Walls lined with glowing panels displayed alien symbols, star maps, and diagrams that shifted in patterns he could barely comprehend. The Vathar's legacy was here in full, waiting for someone who could understand it. The Guardian stood behind him, massive and silent, its glowing eyes scanning every movement. Though it radiated power, it now carried no threat. Elias understood that its purpose had been fulfilled: to evaluate, to test, and to approve. He walked slowly, letting his drone float ahead to illuminate the paths. Every step revealed more marvels: machines that could manipulate energy, platforms that seemed to store planets' worth of data, and devices capable of creating complex matter from raw atoms. Elias's mind raced. Humanity had barely begun to scratch the surface of galactic technology, and here in this forgotten fortress lay centuries or millennia of knowledge waiting to be understood. He approached a massive console at the center of the chamber. Its surface glowed with holographic projections, spinning slowly as if alive. Elias reached out tentatively. As his fingers touched the controls, images expanded. Star systems, fleets, and entire civilizations catalogued in precise detail. The Vathar had seen it all. They were incredible, Elias whispered. They must have controlled entire galaxies. A soft vibration ran through the floor and a new holographic figure appeared. A Vathar archivist, preserved digitally for eternity. Its voice was calm, almost melodic, echoing in the chamber. Greetings, Seeker. If you are seeing this, the fortress has deemed you worthy. You may access the knowledge and power of the Vathar. But know this, our empire fell because we lacked humility. We conquered without understanding, and we destroyed ourselves. You must choose wisely. Elias nodded slowly. I understand, he said. I won't repeat your mistakes. The archivist continued, detailing the history of the Vathar. They were a species of brilliance, unmatched in technology and strategy, yet arrogant. Their fleets spanned dozens of star systems, their weapons capable of annihilating planets. Yet in their pursuit of dominance, they had torn themselves apart, waging endless wars and leaving behind only ruins like this fortress. Elias absorbed every word. It was a warning and a lesson. The Vathar had left the tools for survival and progress, but only for those capable of wielding them responsibly. His gaze fell on a series of vaults arranged around the chamber. Each one contained incredible technology, ships designed to traverse stars in days, energy weapons that could destroy asteroids, and archives containing knowledge of extinct species and civilizations. Elias realized the fortress was not just a library. It was a bridge between the past and the future. He carefully explored, documenting what he could with his drone and wrist scanner. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Elias was enthralled. He found blueprints for propulsion systems far beyond human capability, medical devices that could cure diseases thought incurable, and archives of lost art, music, and literature from civilizations long gone. This is beyond anything I imagined, he whispered. The Guardian stepped forward, its massive form casting a shadow across the room. Elias looked up at it. Human, it said, voice calm, almost approving. You have proven worthy. The Vathar entrusted this legacy to no one lightly. It is now within your grasp. Choose how you will use it. Elias felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. This was more than discovery, more than survival. He held the potential to shape the future of humanity. For the first time, he felt the true scale of his actions. He thought of the human colonies scattered across the galaxy, struggling against hostile environments, rogue factions, and alien threats. He thought of what humanity could accomplish with this knowledge: technological leaps, cures for diseases, solutions for energy, and sustainability. He thought of the mistakes the Vathar had made and swore silently not to repeat them. I will use it to help humanity, he said softly. To protect, to build, to learn, not to conquer. The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter. Then your path is just. Proceed. Elias moved to the first vault, opening it carefully. Inside, he found designs for advanced starships, their construction materials encoded in energy patterns. With his scanners, he could replicate them, slowly bringing humanity into a new era of exploration. Next, he opened a vault containing medical archives. Detailed genetic sequences and treatment plans flowed before him. Diseases that had plagued human colonies for generations could now be understood and cured. He realized that the Vathar had left not just power, but tools for survival, knowledge to advance civilization responsibly. Hours turned into days as Elias cataloged the fortress's treasures. He slept in the corridors, careful not to disturb the Guardian, and awoke refreshed by the soft hum of the alien machinery. He worked tirelessly, driven by purpose. As he explored, he discovered logs describing the Vathar's research into species across the galaxy. Some species had been allies, some rivals, but all were cataloged in precise detail. Elias realized that this fortress was a galactic archive, a repository of knowledge that could preserve civilizations from being lost to time. He began transmitting what he could back to human colonies, carefully selecting data that would benefit survival and development without overwhelming or harming them. Each transmission carried instructions and diagrams encoded for safety, ensuring that humanity could advance without repeating the mistakes of the Vathar. Days passed, and Elias felt a growing sense of purpose. He was no longer just an adventurer. He was a steward, a guardian in his own right, entrusted with a civilization's legacy. The weight was immense, but he carried it with determination. The Guardian watched silently, occasionally projecting information, guiding him toward areas Elias might have missed. Through their interactions, he realized the Guardian was not merely a machine, but a teacher, a mentor left behind to ensure the legacy would be used wisely. One day, Elias found a chamber unlike any other. It was a command center with a massive holographic star map stretching across the room. Systems, fleets, and planetary colonies glowed in intricate patterns. The Vathar had planned entire strategies here, long-term goals that had ultimately failed because of their pride. Elias studied the maps carefully, understanding the potential of humanity with this knowledge. He saw the risks, the mistakes the Vathar had made, and knew he had to proceed cautiously. But he also saw hope. Humanity could explore, learn, and grow without destroying itself. As he worked, a thought struck him. The Vathar had created this fortress as a final test, but they had underestimated humans. Humans were resilient, adaptable, capable of learning not just from triumph but from failure. Elias realized that humanity's strength lay not in technology alone, but in curiosity, empathy, and perseverance. He spoke aloud to the Guardian. "You were right. Humans are different. We survive when others fall. We adapt, and maybe we can do better than the Vathar." The Guardian's eyes pulsed, a soft blue glow filling the room. "Perhaps. Time will tell. The choice is now yours, human. Use what you have learned to guide your people. Preserve life, advance knowledge, protect civilizations. This is the mark of worthiness." Elias nodded. "I will." Over the next weeks, he continued his work, building, documenting, and transmitting knowledge to the human colonies. The fortress, once silent and lifeless, became a hub of learning and discovery. Elias understood its mechanisms better each day and began adapting some of the Vathar designs to human technology. But he was careful. He knew the dangers of arrogance. He took what humanity could handle, introduced new technologies slowly, and emphasized wisdom over power. The Vathar's archives became a guide, not a weapon, and Elias himself became a teacher, transmitting the lessons of survival, humility, and creativity to humanity. Finally, he stood at the edge of the central chamber, looking out over the fortress. The Guardians remained in their positions, silent yet watchful, as if acknowledging his efforts. Elias felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known. He had discovered a civilization lost to time, survived trials that tested his very essence, and now carried a legacy that could elevate humanity across the stars. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "We are ready. Humanity is ready." Outside, the desert of Taraxis stretched endlessly as it had for millennia, but Elias knew that this barren world had become the birthplace of a new era. The fortress, once forgotten by time, now held the promise of the future in human hands. With a final glance at the Guardian, Elias activated his ship's beacon. It would take months to fully transmit all the knowledge safely, but the first signals were already heading to distant human colonies. He had survived the fortress. He had proven humanity worthy, and now, the galaxy would know that humans were not just survivors. They were inheritors of a legacy, capable of growth, wisdom, and extraordinary achievement. Elias Kane, the lone adventurer, had walked into the heart of an ancient empire and emerged as the bearer of hope for his species. The fortress, once silent and lifeless, pulsed with energy, alive with the knowledge of the past and the promise of the future. For the first time in centuries, the Vathar legacy had a steward who would not fail.